So hello everybody, and thank you to the team at ZKM for inviting me to be here in such really lovely company. It's making me so happy. So this talk has nothing to do with this title. I've changed the content, so I'm very sorry. If you're hoping to hear how art drives preservation, it doesn't, possibly, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. So what I'll do is just explain a little bit of the Tate context and where we are, and then what I see as our future challenges. So it's a little bit less ambitious maybe, and it's a bit rambling, and it's also my ideas, and some of them I've been mulling over for a long time and spoken to with different people, and some of them I've just literally thought about it while I'm preparing this. So, I mean, not quite, but almost. And so I'm hoping lots of you will have answers to some of my questions, at least. So just to give you a sense of the Tate collection, or more precisely, the time-based media part of the Tate collection, which is very small. And I will be jumping a little bit between the time-based media collection and the software-based art collection, which you cannot really see on there, but so you can see it a little bit better. So this is the equivalent of the yellow bit on the other disk. These numbers are for a couple of years back, so they're a bit bigger now, but they're still, the proportions sort of is about the same. We've seen an increase in performances and more complex performances, and my colleagues, our conservation manager, Louise Lawson, and Ana Ribeiro have done a lot of research on that with reshaping the collectible and their own and performance research. And then, for all these media have their own issues at multiple levels, and I'm sure you're all aware of problems around digitization and the quality and file formats and display. And we're very lucky that we have I'm going to say a very large team in our context, in that we have 15 people plus variable number of freelancers and external experts that we can call on to focus on this. And we have a wide range of expertise within the team, so it's possible to manage this, sort of. I mean, not sort of. I think I'm fairly confident. I don't tend to come out as confident, but I'm fairly confident that what we have at the moment we can handle. It's safe, and we know how to show it, and we know where the problems are. But this is more or less what we're talking about, and this. And so the last set of statistics that I'm going to show you is this. And this is to do, and I almost didn't put it in because to me it's digital preservation, and it's sort of the bare bones. And then I was like, no, this is the bare bones. This has to be there because it's so core. And if you don't have, at least at a scale like Tate, if you don't have the proper infrastructure for digital storage, and Andreas spoke about this, is like you actually are in a big risk position. And so, we have about 800 artworks now. This doesn't say much about the type of amount or size of the files included. We've got more than 500 hours of video and film and audio files. And we require, this 500 terabytes of storage is such a rough estimate that please don't quote me on that. But it's something in that order. And if you show this to someone at the BFI, the British Film Institute in London, they'll go like, yeah, sure. You do that in a day. For us, it's like we're right on the cusp of where you can get away with, a smaller infrastructure to needing like proper, like serious institutional infrastructure. And there was the acknowledgement of this quite a while back, but it's taken a long time to come to a point now where we are, we have a digital preservation manager in place, and we're not worried that if she leaves, someone else won't replace her, because we were at that stage at one point. And we have a close connection with our technology department where we are really seeing, okay, this is not just going to stop because this one person left, which has happened. What does keep most people's eyes open when they look at this slide is like, is the value of the collection at the bottom, which at one point was really useful to make the case for why we needed the storage and why the collection is valuable. And so now I'll zoom in into the software-based part of things. Because there was a conversation about complexity at lunch, and I was like, yeah, when I first started, video was so complex. And now it's like, it's fine. We know what we are doing. It's okay. So now we worry about software, which is also interesting. So this is the first work that came into the collection back in 2003. And Pip Lawrenson at the time did a brilliant job of working with the artist and the programmer, who was Daniel Jackson. Sorry, the piece is becoming by Michael Craig Martin. I don't know if you know his work, but it's sort of a fixed composition, but then the elements of the composition appear and disappear in a semi-random form. But at that point, people already started, just acknowledge the importance of the artist and working with the programmer and how much knowledge was on the programmer side. We created a backup of all the hardware. We got the source code. There was a test and analysis of that, tests of dependencies. And so all of this sort of continues now. It's all still part of our processes. And so that was a good start. And so 20 years on, this is sort of where we are in terms of software-based artworks. And, there's Michael Craig Martin in 2003. Then there was a gap. And then, can you see my mouse? You can. And then I came in 2008 and did my master thesis on risk assessment of software-based artworks. And when I started there, I was like, oh, okay. This is not going to be the last one. It's only going to increase. There's going to be more. And so when Tom and I were looking at this for a different talk at AIC this summer, we were like, oh, okay, that's, it's not a lot of works. In total, there's like 23. And then whether they fit in here or not, there's like a question around controllers and software and where do these things fit in. But it's like, okay, 23 is not a lot of works, but it's starting to be like a big thing. And this is a big thing because also, these 23 works have all this variability, and that's not all of there. That's just, some of the technologies involved and all the sort of things that we're looking at. And not to mention all the functions, and of course, this can vary from a gigantic crashing puppet with the artist there to lovely butterflies, and you have, all sorts of, I'm going to call them playback systems, but that's not the right word. Software systems and hardware systems and peripherals, and, more than anybody can know everything about with the period of, the time we have for researching one of these works. And so I started sort of going, this was clear from the beginning, and we started the project on software preservation to try and make sense of all this complexity and make things a bit simpler to start an acquisition with. And so I did a little bit of maths, and it's, again, very rough numbers. But if I'm asked about a software-based artwork off the cuff, I'll say it's very complex, at least 30 days of staff time. And if you have colored sculpture, that's not 30 days of staff time, obviously. It's a lot more than that. But some works, you might not need all of that. So we rounded up 30, and that meant what you can see in the blue line is, if you have 4 software-based artworks in a year, that's 120 days of staff time. That's a 50% conservator position, which is great, because that means you can justify a massive team that we have no space for. But anyway, so I don't think that's going to happen. And the point of the project was, well, on one hand, to have Tom's time to look at all the works and review what had been done before, what condition things were, what was missing, because processes changed so much and improved so much over the last few years. But also to make then, having this hindsight, being able to have a workflow, which means, you're coming into a work. So we do have some steps that we know we should be following. And if you can't or don't want to, then you can also fairly quickly get to that. I mean, the theory is that, for someone coming in new, it's easier to start and it should save us some time. We haven't tested that. It might not be true. So we might still need, I don't know, another conservator position. And so this is sort of what we have for software. And I think there's a lot of things that we don't know and that we're still learning about and that we don't even know that we don't know. But there's a few things we are in a very good position in. And I always, when you talk to people in other institutions, you kind of go like, okay, we really need to check our privilege at Tate. And so I feel like now I'm going to sound like I'm bragging. I am not. I'm sort of, we've just been there for 20 years. And there's a very, when I fell in there, lots of this was already in place, and there were some very good people to start with that got this right. So, I mean, Tate is massive, so you have really well-established processes because otherwise nothing would work. And that has really good advantages. It's like no one can come in and just drop an artwork on my desk. There's a process, and unless you follow that process, nothing happens. Which has its disadvantages, of course, because you cannot just do something and expect it to go through. But, it means that we're all a bit saner in conservation. This also means that because it's part of this acquisition process, we know what we have in the collection. We know the conditions things are in, and we know more or less what we are dealing with. There's also a really good process for making sure we have this sufficient budget and staff for this acquisition process and also for displays. There's nothing, or there's very little that supports stuff in between. And I'm sort of comfortable with that for video. I'm sort of comfortable with that for some software. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that with everything, and we haven't tested that. So I know Jack and Tom had some thoughts about it at one point, but we never looked into that. Yeah, and so also the other thing that I think is really useful is at acquisition, we do have this assessment of all the risks. So we do know, what's going to fail, what's it likely to fail like, what's going to happen if we show it, and what can we do to mitigate those risks now, and what was it likely to happen if we're going to show it in 5 years' time. And then, again, specifically for software, the project was really good in getting that baseline. And there's also, we started looking at working with our collection management system because of the digital preservation work, where we're trying to automate metadata into there, and Tom has done a lot of work with the TMS team to adapt it for software as well. So the other thing that we have in place is resources. And this is just an example of, because we started looking at software as a group of media. Tom and Chris King, who's also a conservator at Tate, did a lot of work to define the workstations that we need for software. And this is what was built over 3 years, I'm going to say, Tom, to get to a stage where we have the tools we need. And this was actually quite good because, it was good, or it was done on the budget that was available. So it was sort of things that came together to make this possible. Much of it to the credit of Louise Lawson, who really felt this was important and gave us the support and the budget and Tom's time to do it. The other thing that we do have that is really helpful, and we again, Tom spent a week Tate Stores is that we do have a dedicated space for testing. We need to book it with 3 months in advance, or 2 if you're lucky, or if you're okay working on Fridays afternoons, that's also sometimes possible, but if you need it for a week, you need to book it good, because everybody wants it. And then, we're very lucky that we can hire specialists, and we've sort of been building a network of specialists over time. That is very handy. And now, this is the bragging bit, I think, because it is about culture, in the institutional culture, and I fell into this. When I arrived, this was there, or to a big part. So there's some management, you can't really, put your foot in your mouth too often, but, our knowledge is recognized, and it's part of the process. So, curators do need to come to us for risk assessments and costings before they can progress their process themselves on the acquisition side. So it's sort of the initial, if a curator isn't used to that process, it's sort of they're forced to understand it because it's just so well settled. And so, yeah, we're brought in, and because of that, also, the more complex work is perceived as, the earlier we'll be contacted with questions and saying, well, what do you think of this? And it's really good. And I do acknowledge Andrea's point about saying no. And I think I was told this pretty early on when I started, like, no, it's not no, it's like, yes, and we just need this for that, which is a good strategy, if you can. And then, it's accepted that we work with the artists together, and curators trust us to have that communication in a professional manner, which is good. It's also understood that the research is essential. You don't just pick up a work and save the files. You do need to understand what it is. And there's a bit of the art historical context. And so we do have, as part of the acquisition process, that time is built in. With displays is a bit trickier because the whole process is messier. So it's worse, but I think for me, I work in acquisitions mostly, so I think it feels less dangerous if you have this first moment that is very clear. And then finally, there's this broader research culture at Tate that I'm slightly concerned about now because Pip Lorentzen is leaving, and our managers are changing in conservation as well. So I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. Hopefully not change too much, but something is going to change. But that means that we get to do research in areas that are not necessarily just the one artwork or the one technology, because we need it immediately for this acquisition. We're allowed to sort of have a bit of a musings, let's go. It's not musings, it's serious, it's more serious than that, but it is a perk, and I think that's why so many people have just stay, and I think people enjoy the job. Okay, so that's enough of the bragging. I hope it shows you, it's only 20, correct me, no, more than 20, because PIP started in 98, and I'm sure conservation started before that. So 40 years? There's hope. So the challenges, opportunities is, I'll move on to what I see as problems coming. And the challenges, opportunities is a little bit ironic, but then again also not, because it's also, these are really interesting questions, I find. I'm going to rush a little bit. And they all come, I ended up in sustainability, and that might have to do with some conversations I've been having with Claudia Hock as well, and how all, in the end, I've been using the word sustainability a lot. So the one aspect that I'm sort of worried about is economical sustainability. If you start seeing the collections growing, and this is for software. For the numbers I gave in the first slide, in 2016 we had 600 artworks, and when I did the last count was closer to 900 in 6 years. So if this progresses, and it might progress slower, but it will be too much you can't have a team of, I don't think any institution wants a team of 100 time-based media conservators, basically, is it? So it's looking at what, and besides that, you also have, things get more complicated. We're having more complex software-based artworks, more complex performances. So it's more and more time that we are seeing being needed. And then we do have all the historical that needs to be cared for as well. And at the moment, it's been sort of in a gap. It's not, we don't have like 50-year-old pieces that haven't been looked at yet. But that's possible to happen if all you're doing is looking at the acquisition and the display. So that's one aspect that I've been thinking about. The other thing that is very closely related is, of course, the technological sustainability of the works. And I feel, I'm sure that if you're working with software, you're thinking about this and talking to artists about this, about making something more sustainable over time. And what we can do now to address that. Is there some obvious dependency that you actually don't need? But I don't think we talk a lot about this. And I would love to see that more. Also because it's also a chance to work with the artists closely and bring this idea of sustainability, which I don't want to stop anybody from using whatever they want, but if they know the risks and understand, they can change something minor that just makes it easier for everybody and means their work lives longer. And then the final point, this is the one that I've only recently embarrassingly enough, I only recently started thinking about this on environmental stability. And I started thinking about this, even though there are other initiatives at Tate and other members of my team looking at it, of our team looking at it. There was a Copies for Climate workshop internally at Tate as part of Reshaping the Collectible that PIP organized with an external team with Henry McGee and Jacob Chu, where we got a team together to look, people from different teams, to look at the environmental impact, or comparing the environmental impact of sending an exhibition over to a location versus sending replicas of works, or having replicas done in this location. And as part of that, we started looking at digital. And that meant, looking at the data and the amount of data and how it's stored, but also, looking at equipment, in electronic equipment, and the use of that equipment. And we didn't, this was one day looking at this and defining the case study. So it was really on very, very superficial. And I came out of there thinking, okay, this basically is telling me that we need to do less, and that's really hard. I've spent all this time thinking we need to do more and better. And I was like, oh no, we need to do less. I don't know how to do that, right? Yes, and so then this has been a little bit in my mind, and then I thought, I haven't heard that many people in conservation talking about this. And then I was by the entrance door, and I saw the Dundee event, and I was like, okay, no, there's people thinking about it. I just hadn't quite clocked. I knew there was the event. I just hadn't quite clocked it. So, and of course, there is work being done at digital preservation, looking at this, which is a very good help in terms of at least the data part of artworks. What is slightly worrying is this. I think this is a really good quote, but it's from 2010. And and we were doing a workshop at iPress at the beginning of September about this again and what we could do. So, yeah, so I don't think we can wait 10 years again. So that's why I thought I'd talk about it now. And this is it. Sorry. Good.